Getting some kind of healthy meal on the table at night is one of my biggest hurdles on the daily. I'm Julie Lyles Carr, host of the Modern Motherhood Podcast from AllMomDoes, and I've got someone on today who's going to be able to help us all out when it comes to feeding those families of ours with all kinds of great tips and tricks. Today, I welcome Polly Connor of the popular thriving home duo, Polly and Rachel, to talk about their cookbook From Freezer to Table and more. Polly, thank you so much for being on today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
So give me the backstory on how all this started. Let me guess. When you were a little girl, you thought, oh, I can't wait to grow up and have a blog in which I post recipes about freezer cooking. So back me up and tell me how all this happened.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'd say it all started when I took Rachel's job. We love to say it. So I am 50% of Team Thriving Home. So Rachel Tiemeyer is my partner in crime. We founded Thriving Home together and we co-wrote our cookbook. So she is not able to be here today. So I'm representing Team Thriving Home. But we joke around that we really crossed paths for the first time when I took her job at our church. So Rachel is a couple years older than me. And so she kind of entered into the motherhood stage when I was graduating from grad school. And so she was stepping out, I was stepping in. I ended up taking her job at our church. So that's the first time we really crossed paths. But during that time, we both had our own separate hobby blogs. Her son was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at a very early age. And so she was just entering into this new journey of learning about real foods and the ingredients. It was kind of before the big explosion of just what is actually in our food came on the horizon for everyone. So she was really kind of diving into that and sharing all these real food recipes and just what she's learning about, health and lifestyle living. And I had a blog that was kind of dabbling in more of like the DIY and thrifty living. And I love to repurpose furniture. So I'd post step by step how I did that stuff. And of course that was for sure pre-kid days because I would never even have time to lift a paintbrush at this stage of my life. But, so we had our hobby blogs going and, we had crossed paths from work stuff and we just always really clicked. We were just like, man, we're just really alike. And we even look alike. I mean, maybe not so much anymore, but in that stage, we for sure did. We did our hair the same. We dressed the same. Our kids mistaked us for each other. So we joked around a lot about, we should just start business together. What would we do? We had no idea, nothing to sell, So then we just decided, let's do a blog together because this could be really fun. So if it doesn't go anywhere, we had a fun time doing it with a friend. But if it goes somewhere, this could be a great part-time income and just maybe, just a little pay a bill or two. We never imagined it would turn into what it has. And luckily we kind of got in on the blogging when it was early in its infancy years, where mom blogs were just kind of on the rise and kind of a new thing. So I think that's part of our success is just a little bit due to luck on our timing. During that season 2, we both had kids at home when we started Thriving Home in 2012. And personally, I'll just speak for myself, I really floundered as a new mom. I'm very open about this. I am authentic because I don't want women to feel alone and they're floundering at home. So I went from a job that was extremely social and independent meaning the schedule wasn't rigid, but I worked with teams of people. I worked with students. I was in student ministry. And all of a sudden I'm at home with this fussy little baby.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, were you there? Is that
I feel you.
So it was nothing short of traumatic for me to go through that transition. And Rachel at that point had 3 little ones at home. So we really were just just buried in this whole stay-at-home mom thing. And one of the things that was helpful was freezer cooking. So basically making meals in advance, freezing them, and then all you do is take them out and cook them. So that way all the prep's done, you do things in bulk. And Rachel at that time was in a freezer club. And we can talk more in detail about that later. But in short, it's this group of women who once a week get together and exchange freezer meals. Okay, so you make 6 at once, come together, and then share what you've made. So you come home with 6 different meals.
I'd probably be kicked out immediately. I have 8 kids, and I can imagine me trying to enter a freezer club and everybody being like, "You got to be kidding me!" So
you have to bring double the portions. For
yeah,
everyone.
I think I need the mega freezer club. But continue for normal people. This sounds amazing. Freezer club.
Yeah, mega. If you find other mega families, you could totally do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to do it with people who are in similar stage of life and similar type eaters.
In other words, people who aren't crazy. I hear what you're saying underneath all that, Polly. I got it. Go.
You said put it on me. No. So anyway, on the blog, Thriving Home, our goal was to equip and encourage women to thrive at home. And so basically it was just an overflow of what we were doing, of what we were learning, of what worked, what didn't work, funny stories, recipes. And so we started noticing a lot of our traffic was coming from the freezer meal recipes. So again, this was before the days of Pinterest, which is hard to know.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it was like you depended on like SEO, on search engines rather than Pinterest. So anyway, we're getting a lot of traffic to these freezer meals and more. So we were like, well, let's start writing in this direction. Let's share more freezer cooking information. So we just went with it, right? So then we start getting a publisher to reaching out to us saying, hey, would you ever be interested in writing a freezer meal cookbook? And that was kind of hard for us to decide. We're like, do we want to go in this publishing world? Are we authors? What are we? So we talked it over and thought it over for a long time. And finally we ended up hiring a literary agent. She was just our savior and all of that. Because we hadn't researched traditional publishing. We didn't know. The first offer we got on the cookbook was like pennies compared to what we ended up getting, just because we didn't know. We were just like, hey, that sounds kind of nice at the moment. But she's like, no, girls, here. It was like, no, she just looked at the market. She's like, there's no great freezer cookbook out there. I think you can make a beautiful one with good recipes. And I think you have a great niche, So she was the one that coached us and got us with a great publisher. And then the exciting thing for us right now is our publisher recently got acquired by Penguin Random House, which is the biggest publisher in the U.S. now.
Right.
So we're now with the powerhouse publisher, which is awesome. So our first cookbook came out with Rodale. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. And then this next one's going to be with Penguin Random House. But
right, Rodale is kind of a health and fitness line specific.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, you know the world.
Well, I just try to stay on top of things the best I can. So in modern home management, what do you see as the challenge for women today? And I think you've tapped into some of it. I think some of the best homegrown businesses grow out of women who are noticing something that is a problem for them, and they seek for a way to solve it, and they share it. And there are a lot of women out there that they've had a business come their way that wasn't really what they intended to do. They were just originally hoping to help others who were in a similar situation. So this whole home management lane today, what are you noticing? What are the trends? What are the challenges that are a little bit different?
Gosh, man, lots of thoughts on that. I think first, comparison is the thief of joy.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so I think the modern mom right now is in this brand new generation of you're seeing everything, a filtered version of everything everyone's doing. Okay. And I'm thinking my mom did not know what their neighbor was doing on the weekends. My mom didn't know what they were cooking, what activities they're involved in. They didn't have this comparison thing. So I think modern moms really have the challenge of fighting comparison and feeling like you're not doing enough. Right. So I think that's one challenge. But then, just the obvious too is like we're busier and busier because of that pressure, I think, to keep up, to keep our kids involved, to be doing this vacation, to be working mom, but stay at home mom and have a perfect house mom and fit mom and good cooking mom. You have all these hats you're supposed to wear and you can't do it all. So, I think we do feel that pressure, and that I think a lot of moms feel really run down because you simply can't do it all. Something has to give somewhere. I'd say on a heart level, what moms are facing is that thief of joy of that comes from comparison. On a very practical level, I do see and hear, I'd say, almost every mom does want to feed their family good food, right? I think if you pin a mom down and be like, yeah, I want my family to eat healthy home cooked food. But the question is like, how? Right. A lot of them don't know how practically to cook well. Because a lot of our moms were working moms and had the boxed lasagna for dinner. Mm-hmm. Or, that was like the new age of like prepackaged, pre-cooked meals. So we weren't really taught how to cook things from scratch. And then, I think the time factor too, it's kind of like, well, I don't have time to make a whole home cooked meal. We've got our activities. We've got, this and this and this. And so that's where freezer cooking was kind of born out of like, we feel the dinner time struggle is real, right? It's like you want this time around the table with your family, but the time and the skill to do it is really tricky. And so that's freezer cooking for us has just been a game changer. It's been a lifestyle, not just a one-time cooking party. It really is like a way of life for me now. So when I make a meal, I almost always double it or triple it to make for a future meal. And that way I'm cooking less in the future. I'm spending less money because I'm cooking in bulk. And it's just, you're more available to your people mentally, and your hands are free too. You know, my kids are 7, 5, and 2. And so we are hands on stage right now. Like, you've got to be present. You've got to be on your knees with the kids, tying shoelaces and, you know, putting Band-Aids on owies and being outside with them. They can't run by themselves outside quite yet. So freezer cooking for us has helped that dinner time struggle to actually have a meal on the table that's home cooked and with real ingredients, and can bring your people together with less stress.
A million years ago, one of my best friends and I, her name's Jenny, and we started our parenting careers 27 years ago. Oh, heavens. Woo-hoo! And there was a little paperback book back in the day, called Once a Month Cooking. And it introduced me to this idea of batch cooking, like trashing the kitchen all at once.
Right.
Which was something I'd never seen. I mean, my mom did a lot of home cooked meals when I was living in her home, but this was something really different. The idea of really getting ahead of the game and going for that more batch kind of environment, like you're talking about, doubling, tripling a recipe so that you've got extras waiting in the wings. And it was very helpful. I had no idea that it was a great preparatory ground for, as large as our family now has become, to think through really making the best use of my time. And it's funny, that tactic of mega batching, if you will, is something that I still use even in my work world today, in my writing world, in house projects. It was really kind of a revolutionary concept to go ahead, dive in, and trash everything and clean it once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, it sounds like to me, from freezer to table, the other thing that we're really saying too is you're going to have meals for your family prepared ahead of time. You're not going to have to think about that, but you almost just might discover that the time equation becomes friendlier for you. Is that something that you find?
Yeah, for sure. You know, we always say our goal for our readers and people who buy our book is not a full freezer. Our goal is to free you up as a mom to be more present. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, when you do freezer cook, when you do work in advance, when you do the meal prep Sunday or whatever a lot of people do, then yes, you are more available during the week. Like, for example, you know, it's been so nice outside lately. I'm like so thankful I can be outside with my kids up until dinner time because I have something prepped. I've thrown it in the oven. I'm playing outside. I'm coming in, pulling it out. Dinner's ready. So yeah, it does give you the gift of time more than anything, I think.
So give me some strategies now. You said that Rachel Tiemeyer, your partner, she began this journey because she had a child who had GI issues and she was needing to adjust some of the dietary requirements and needs for that child. In my home, I myself eat fairly keto. My husband is pescatarian. I have a couple of vegetarians. I have a vegan or two occasionally until I make a brisket, and then they're not vegan anymore at all.
The convictions.
Right, yeah, it kind of goes a little sideways. So what are some strategies that y'all have discovered when you have some different dietary needs in the family? How are some ways that embracing this kind of thriving home approach, this freezer approach, can help with that as well?
Well, I think that, like I said earlier, you could, if you want to kind of partner up with other like-minded families. So, for example, like if you want to get an ongoing freezer club going and you're dairy-free, you know, you find another dairy-free family, and you can do a freezer club with just 2 people. You can do it with 3 people. It doesn't have to be the 6 people that we shaped the club around that we told people to do. So you simply, it's that idea again of just doing it all at once, right? Well, especially with you, if you have it sounds like you have a lot of different diets to cook for.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably figured it out, but it seems like you'd have to just like make this person's kind of entrees in bulk and freeze them ahead of time, you know, and label them.
Right.
Which you say are you able to cook like one meal for everyone that everyone can eat, or do you have to do multiple meals for a dinner time?
You know, what I've learned to do is a lot of times I will do a fish side. So if somebody, if I've got a couple who eat cod, salmon, that kind of thing, and then if I'm just really wanting chicken or a cow, I will do that for myself. And I will say my 3 sons are not at all in the vegan vegetarian lane. So I hang with the boys. And then I usually do several different side dishes that if one of the kids is eating vegetarian, that'll fill them up. So I was even looking at your roasted vegetable hash that you were featuring today. Yeah.
Oh,
like that is one of those things that would be perfect across our family. And then I'll do a side dish of say, quinoa. And so, there are things that become, as you play this vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, and, carnivore lane, that I've just learned to make enough of the things that traditionally we might consider side dishes that for someone with a different eating style are main dishes. And we just make all of that available. And you can kind of pick and choose and build what you want from there. We generally always have a big salad that everybody can dress however they want to dress. If that's with a meat-based protein, or if that is with more of a vegetable, even, a tofu kind of a thing. We keep all those things around, and that does help. Now, I do run something of a Luby's cafeteria. You're still in those ages where kiddos are generally home in the evening with you. I'm doing the whole everybody shows back up at all variety of times, ready to eat at all variety of times. And I will say that's where devices in particular, like my crock pot, I have several, my Instant Pot, and I even have, I don't know if your mom had back in the day for holidays or buffets at the house, but those warming trays that you leave food on, we do that too. I mean, it's kind of
you are a buffet. You're just like, come get it when you're here.
Yeah. So now let me state for the record, this happens maybe a couple times a week at this point. The rest of the time, I'm like, good luck, people. Build what you can out of what has been cooked that is now in the fridge.
Your staples are here. You're on your own.
Right. So talk about some of the modern tools that we have that can be of help and the things that you're seeing that are coming up.
Luckily, I think the online world is providing so many great free resources. So these batch cooking grocery shopping lists, or cookbooks like ours, or meal planning sites. On our site, we even have a weekly menu plan that people can, just get at meal ideas from. And so, luckily all those free resources are out there. I think you brought up the Instant Pot. I think that's an interesting, I'm not sure if you know this, we are contracted for a second book, and the book's going to be called From Freezer to Cooker. So it's going to be all meals that can be made in bulk and then either thawed and put in the slow cooker or put straight in the Instant Pot from frozen. So we're going to have options. You can cook this meal in the slow cooker or in the Instant Pot. So again, I think more and more resources are coming out of basically a felt need of I think the Instant Pot seems like a working mom's dream because, you get home 5:36 and you got to have dinner for your people. That would be really, really hard. So if you've done some work ahead of time and you can plop a frozen meal in the Instant Pot and push a button, that's a dream machine.
Absolutely. We love ours. Ours is getting quite the workout. It really is.
I think, in families like yours, it seems like another good solution is to make meals that are kind of individually packaged. So I'm thinking like a burrito that's wrapped up in its own foil wrap. So you make a mass production of breakfast burritos, or we have a burrito recipe on our cookbook or on our blog. Like you wrap those up in foil and freeze them. Then people can just come and get them whenever they're ready, and they can thaw out within minutes. You just microwave them. Those individual type meals that can be, not all made and cooked at once. Seems like that would be helpful in the stage of life where everyone's eating at different times. Absolutely. So like I said, we're in the little years stage right now where luckily everyone eats the same thing. They don't really have preference. Well, they do, but we don't cater to their preferences at this time. Yeah. We're the type of family of, sorry, that's for dinner. If you don't eat it, you're going to be hungry. So
I think there's a lot to be said for that. And definitely my youngest kids, my twins, they really don't get as much say. I'm like, you're eating what I'm eating. But I think it also brings up an interesting question as well. What are you seeing in terms of prepackaged foods, convenience foods, and what we're really beginning to understand more and more about nutrition? Because I think that for a lot of working moms back in the day, if you will, let's say, 70s, 80s, 90s, the idea of having all these prepackaged foods, it almost sounds like, well, isn't that what you're talking about? Why don't I just buy the prepackaged stuff at the store these days? But what do you see as the value of doing food at home?
Oh, man. Rachel could speak to this a lot more scientifically than I could, but our definition of health is made with real whole ingredients. So the ingredients have one word, one ingredient, right? And so, I think more and more people are seeing the value of eating that whole foods diet, how the body responds to that, not only through health, but you lose weight, you have less illnesses. Gosh, there's just so much stuff they're just linking to all these additives and preservatives and all this unrecognized stuff that's in our prepackaged food. So, I think people loved the prepackaged food at first because it was, wow, this is easy, right? This is hands off. This is made for me. I'm done. But, I think as more and more people have investigated what's actually in these food, they're realizing this isn't food at all.
Right.
These are artificial. These are linked to ADHD. These are linked to this cancer. This is linked to these, hypothyroidism. Like there's just all sorts of links to these additives and preservatives that I think a lot of it's still unknown, to be honest. But I mean, you see the market. It's going. People are moving more and more towards wanting real foods, whole foods. So one of the benefits of cooking this lifestyle of freezer cooking is you are in control of your ingredients, 100%. If you go out to eat, that's not the case. If you buy something from the grocery store, it's not the case. But if you cook from home, you know exactly what's in your ingredients, what's going in your body, what's going into your kids' bodies, and you can control that. You can alter that. If your kid has a sensitivity towards something, you can adjust your foods, which is wonderful. So when you take the time to cook in bulk, you're not only saving time, but you're saving your health in the long run by just feeding your body the real whole ingredients that it was made to absorb, that it was made to need.
Back to more great ideas for dominating your kitchen game after you've had this chance to change the world of a child in need. Just like that, we're officially into the last lap of the year. 2018, where are you going so fast? I'm looking back on the things I said back in January that I wanted to get accomplished this year, and I'm revving up to finish the year strong. And you can too. You started out the year wanting to make a difference, make an impact on the world, and you can. For just a little over $1 a day, you can provide medical, educational, and spiritual care for a child in need through Compassion International. Go to compassion.com/allmomdoes and finish the year strong by making a world of difference in the life of a child. It's exciting to see a lot of different documentaries out there, say on Netflix or on Amazon Prime, where you can really get a lot more educated. And I know that some of the information at times can, you've got a great vegetarian documentary that seems to completely counteract maybe a documentary on a paleo lifestyle or whatever. But what all of them seem to really want to get across is all of this fake stuff that we call food is having tremendous adverse effect on our bodies. And when we look at disease rates in the U.S. today, it shouldn't look like what it looks like. Absolutely. And we track back to food. Now, I'm asking you to take off kind of the mom hat for a minute, the nutritionist hat for a minute, and put on the entrepreneurial hat because
I like that hat.
I know this whole online space, this place that you've been able to craft and build a business with your partner, Rachel T. Meyer, in thrivinghomeblog.com. Mm-hmm. Cookbook publishing is a little bit of a different animal than where I've lived in nonfiction. And I've heard Rachel Hollis talk about, she spanned the world between fiction, nonfiction, and she has a couple of cookbooks and has talked about that process being a little different. So when it comes to cookbook publishing, we're talking photo shoots galore and a completely different production run. Educate us a little bit on what it takes to actually get a cookbook to the traditional publishing route.
A lot of work. There it is. No. We brought our readers in on the process. We documented step by step what this looked like for us. It depends publisher by publisher what this looks like, first of all. For ours, we were given about 9 months to develop recipes for our cookbook. And so it seems like a lot of time, but it's not really. Right. Especially when we want to test every recipe from fresh and frozen. So practically what this would look like is we would develop a recipe. So we'd get an inspiration. Okay, we want a great pork tenderloin recipe, right? So we look online, get ideas, get an inspiration, and then from there we tweak. So we'd start with something and say, okay, now we want to make it all whole foods. So let's take that out of there. We can't have that in there. Let's replace this. Let's sub this. Okay, now we need to make this freezer friendly. So, okay, we need to make sure this sauce is frozen separately, or we need to make sure they know to wrap this way. So we tweak the recipe and instructions from there, and then we would test it. And the way we test is, so for example, I would make a meal and I would double it. I would have one fresh for my family and I would freeze one to send on to Rachel's family. So every recipe in our cookbook has been tested by both of us from fresh and frozen. Sometimes when, something's frozen, like the spices can intensify a little bit, or a certain sauce can get a funky texture. And we're like, okay, that didn't work. So we just tested every single recipe tediously. And almost every time after we tested the first time, we're like, we need to go back and try that again. We need to do less this, more this, So it's a very tedious process to get the actual recipes written. And then photography, again, that's kind of case by case basis. We were lucky to, in our contract, our publisher took on the photography. And so they actually did the photography up in Pennsylvania in their studio. So we were involved with the process. We weren't on site, but they were sending us pictures and daily updates. Like it was a whole week where once we submitted our recipes, they had like 4 staff people, 1 photographer, 1 chef, 1 food stylist, and art director, all on site for the photography of our book. That was really important for us too, because we're like, a lot of people think of freezer cooking as like boring and beige food. Like we have to show this can be fresh. It can be full of texture. This is going to be modern. This isn't like your grandma's old casserole. Like this is like fresh, good food, right? So the photography was really important to us, and we were so happy the way that turned out too. So, once we submit the manuscript, that goes back and forth between our editor, the photography's going on, and then it starts to come together. You get your first draft, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a real thing. It's so fun to see the first draft. And then, from there you have the whole like launching it. And this is our first book too. So it's been just a fun ride to see what opportunities it's opened up for us. We've gotten to be on St. Louis live morning shows. We've gotten to be on really cool podcasts and talk to really cool people. And so it's opened up a lot of doors for us as bloggers. And I think it gives bloggers credibility too, right? So there's the mom blog space is just saturated. But if you have like a published book, that kind of pulls you out above a little. You know what I mean? You're kind of have some credibility as a blogging space and as authors and as people when you do have a published cookbook. So we feel like that's brought in kind of a new following of people on our social media and on our blog. So it's been super fun. It just came out in September, so we're still a little bit kind of in the new stage of it and still learning and trying to figure out, the best way to keep it on people's minds and get it in people's homes.
Get the word out. And one thing that y'all have done that I think is really hard, was very hard for me when I began chasing that nonfiction lane, was committing to a particular audience with a particular topic. I thought that was really hard because I think everybody wants to blog and write the posts that they think everybody's going to read.
Right.
And yet the willingness to say, you know what? We're seeing some traction with freezer cooking and we're going to land there for a while and run with it, I think is a really important business construct for our listeners out there to know. It's a hard thing to do. I didn't want to get categorized in just the mom lane because there are other things that I do, but the reality was that is the thing that I've lived a lot of life doing, is raising 8 kids. And so ultimately it really made sense for my first book to be on parenting, raising an original. But it was hard to do, and you've got a lot of ideas, and you have other things on thrivinghomeblog.com as well. But I think it's really important that people know that from a business construct. Now, talk about being in business and life together with Rachel as friends and as sisters in Christ, as business partners. I have a lot of friends out there who have dreamed of doing something with a pal of theirs. What are the things that you think are important for women to know when they decide to walk out a vision, walk out a dream, put together a business together?
Yeah. Well, first of all, choose a business partner with care. I think Rachel and I just got really lucky. We really didn't know each other all that well going into business together, and it could have been a total disaster. But I think we really got lucky on our personality. Our personalities really jiving well together, and we just have luckily both good communication skills and relational skills. But gosh, we've had to work through some stuff too. So we always joke about it as our second marriage. Like, it sounds weird, but it's like, it's a commitment that you're entering into someone, and you have to completely trust them because they're making financial decisions on your behalf. They are, operating 50% of this business on your behalf and speaking for you at times. And so it takes a lot of trust for sure. So it has to be someone with great integrity, someone that you personally like, because you're going to be interacting. If you're starting a business like this, you're going to be interacting every single day, and you're going to be going through life together. And so when she gets a sick kid, I carry the weight of that, and vice versa. When I'm out of town, she carries the weight of that. Or if, just something heavy is going on in life, like a marriage issue or another work issue or whatever, it's like you're carrying the weight of that other person, just because your lives and your businesses are so intertwined. If you're doing something in this space, you can't really turn it off and on. So we, in the beginning, we for sure ran into some speed bumps, just like not quite understanding how the other person worked or why they were being a certain way. And so one thing that helped was we created our State of the Union meeting. And so this was especially important in the early years of us starting our business. We've kind of gotten more in our groove where we just now know each other and know our workflow well enough to know what the other person's doing. But in our State of the Union meeting, we had just some preset questions that we would ask. Just kind of, we've always fought to keep things 50-50. So we would evaluate our workload. Okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? Has this become a bigger job than it was 6 months ago? Yes. Okay, how about I take some of that from you? Okay, I'm really not enjoying doing this part of it. Is there anything you can take? So it's a lot of ebb and flow to make sure we both are really still enjoying the job, and keeping things 50-50. Because I think what happens is in our relationship, I'm a little bit more of the go-getter and Rachel's a little bit more of like the perfectionist. So we always joke around that like I steamroll ahead and she comes behind me and cleans things up.
I like that.
It works great for us because
I need a Rachel. Yeah.
Right. Without her, like everything would be a disaster, grammatical mess. And so she's like the one that she's a little slower to make decisions and slower to get on board with things. And I'm the one, we should try this, try this, try this. And because I'm that go-getter, slowly things get more on my plate because I'm trying out this new software and all of a sudden I'm the only one who knows how to do it. And then I take on more things. And so we just have to continually communicate who has what. And then, we've been in different stages of life. When we started the blog, she had 3 little kids at home. I had 1. And so I was taking a lot of the weight of like the unscheduled stuff. And now she's got 3 kids in school and I have 2 at home. So I'm like off. When I'm off, right? Mm-hmm. When I'm off the grid, like I'm not in blog world anymore because I've got 2 little kids that demand a lot of attention. So she's, we've just ebbed and flowed in life a little bit together. But our State of the Union meetings have really helped to kind of bring up anything that has, is lingering, anything that need to be talked about. It brought up good conversations, hard conversations. But, just as in any good relationship, we've just had to have good communication. We've had to talk about things that are bothering us. We have to address things quickly. Like if there was a tone used, you have to kind of say, okay, are you mad or are you okay? Just
right.
Just being really keeping short accounts with how you're feeling about conversations, about events in the business, about decisions made. And so again, I'm so thankful that the beauty of working with someone is that you get to benefit from all of their strengths too. So I get to benefit from all of Rachel's strengths and she gets to benefit from mine. So it's not just taking on the weaknesses of someone, which you do, but you also get to bring in their talents and their connections and their skills and their ideas. And you get to, create something together in that way. So Thriving Home would never be where it's at if we weren't a team. We never could have gotten this cookbook done if we weren't a team. There's no way. So we're both really, really thankful that God's given us just that friendship above being business partners and that we try to prioritize that, but that also he's blessed our business to be what it needs at this stage.
I think, too, that intentionality of making sure the communication is healthy, making sure the friendship is strong is really important. It seems to me in our world today, and I even experienced this being on staff at a church, maybe part of it is the social media aspect. Maybe it is more of the desire that many of us have for community and connection. But this whole idea of, well, this is my professional world and this is my personal world, I see those lines getting blurred
for sure
all over the place. I want to like who I work with. Right. And if I don't, it's an issue. And so I believe that we're going to see more and more of this kind of relational curation become very necessary as people are more intentional about the kind of work they want to do, the kind of places they find value. But it's also going to be interesting to see those professional and personal lines blurred a whole lot more. Yeah. So now here's an irony. You have a business that's all about the home. So what's it like to work in that space in the context of your in real life home.
Yeah. So what's it like to write about thriving at home while I work?
Exactly.
Yes. Gosh, I mean, just, every season you try to strike a balance. As you know, there's no perfect balance. There's always an ebb and a flow when some areas suffering while some areas thriving. I think for us, we've just had to take it almost semester by semester since our life revolves around school at this time. And so, when my kids were itty bitty and, was nursing and nap times and all that, like I didn't send them off to daycare. I worked during the nap times. I worked at night. I worked during the off times. And then, honestly, at that point, our business was smaller. And so it didn't require as many hours. But now that it's grown with the book and everything, it was just, again, kind of figured out, okay, what's going to be a good fit? What's this balance of time I can send kids to daycare, preschool, whatever, and get some solid work hours in and not have my family suffer. You know what I mean? So there's just this, and it's hard because, the kids needs to just ebb and flow all the time. So, it's just a constant evaluation of, okay, I really personally enjoy working. Like I for sure love being a mom and have no doubt God's called me to that, obviously. But I also have had to embrace that I love to work. And I had a hard time with that for a while. I kind of thought I was a bad mom for enjoying my work time away from them. I was like, I would be filled up by going and working on the blog and creating and writing. And I was like, am I wrong for liking this? But it kind of came to this self-realization of like, no, this is how God created me. And if he fills me up this way, I'm a better mom to these kids when I do get my own space to go write and create. Right. And so, again, like I said, I didn't have that luxury when you have a newborn. You can't just like drop them and go, So yeah, a lot of what we do is just an overflow on the blog, which is nice too. So, we're taking pictures of the food we're about to eat for dinner. Like, right. I can tell you how many little hands have crept into my food photography. Or my husband patiently waiting on dinner while I'm on the back porch trying to catch natural light to get a good photo of the burger, so a lot of it is integrated for sure. They're part of the process, which I think is good. They get to see mom working and they get to see mom pursuing a hobby and, doing something outside of them. Like it teaches them the world does not revolve around them in their lives. Like there's other things going on. So yeah, we integrate them, we share about, again, I haven't done this in a while, but I used to share just great parenting stories that happened. Like I have one on the blog. I talk about the time my daughter headbutted me in Joanne Fabrics in front of a whole bunch of other women. And it's a great story. And so, we for sure bring them in on the process. I know Rachel's kids are a little older and they have their own little cameras that they take pictures of the food with.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we do our best to try to, it's not a separated work life, home life. They're for sure intertwined and we just have to kind of case by case figure out when do we need to separate to actually go work and when can we kind of bring them in on the process and take pictures of what we're doing and just let them be part of that.
And I think it's very powerful. For generations, kids were involved in the family business. They saw how mom and dad, whether that was some kind of print shop or farming or quilt, whatever the thing was, kids were included. And I think it's beautiful to see that these kids of this generation are getting more of an opportunity to do that. And for it to not just be one day a year, take your daughter or son to work day, right, but for them to really understand what that world looks like so that when it's time to launch them into the world, they don't have that shock of, right, every day? Work is like every day.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Well, Polly Connor of Thriving Home and to your partner, Rachel T. Meyer, we thank you so much for being with us today and for great ideas on getting a hot home cooked meal on the table and also how to kind of bring some of the goods to the table when it comes to exploring the online world for business and how to find a great partner, all those things. Polly, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun.
Check out thrivinghomeblog.com to keep up with all the great ideas and recipes that Polly and Rachel have for you. And you can connect with me on all the socials too at Julie Lyles Carr, and be sure to use the hashtag Raising an Original when you're reading my book so I can follow along and share. Donna Tody and Rebecca Beckett, you're the best. Donna is our producer and Rebecca is our content coordinator, and they are the amazing team that makes sure the podcast gets out into the world each week. Make sure you've subscribed and leave us a 5-star review and comment. In the world of podcasting, it really does help make sure that others can find us. Check out All Mom Does on the socials and the website, allmomdoes.com. It's a fantastic place of information and inspiration for your modern mom journey. Next week on the show, hilarious, warm, real. Her adoption journey has been inspiring us over the last few years, and her writing and speaking are incredible. We've got Lisa Harper coming up next week, and you don't want to miss this conversation. I'll see you then.